So, I recently decided to change my race, as you may have noticed. In this video, I want to cover all of the different races, their bonuses, their benefits, and which race is the best for you to use, depending on your role and class. And ultimately, why did I decide to change? So when you go to create your character, you're going to be put forth with the decision of what race to choose. Each race will give certain bonuses, as you'll see over here on the left, and each of them is pretty much unique. However, some races are locked behind a paywall. You'll have to unlock them. Once you do, they'll be always unlocked to your account, and whenever you create a new character, you can use that race. And you'll be able to purchase them in the Zen market just here. Whether you actually want to or not, that is another question entirely. We'll get into that. Just be aware the Metallic Ancestry Dragonborn is the most exclusive. It only comes on the Zen market every now and again with a sale, so currently you can only get it from the auction house. So let's move to those races and their bonuses, and what class and what role are best suited to what races. So let's start things off with damage dealers. This is how I would rank them. Now the races with the star effect, those are the support races. If you don't have somebody in your team on that race, then it is best you are on that race to increase not just your damage, but your entire team. If you look at the drow, you can see it has the effect of Darkfire, which can reduce the enemy's defense by 5%, which results in you and your entire team to nearly deal 3.5% extra damage against your target. It may seem like a small thing to you. However, Neverwinter is built upon adding up all of these small bonuses to result in massive gains. That is followed by the Menzen Baranzan Renegade, which similarly has that ability of Fairy Fire, which can also reduce the target's defense. Again, giving not just you, but your entire team a damage boost. However, if somebody is already using those races in your team, you're best off switching to a race that's going to give you some extra stats. And you want to prioritize your offensive stats. These first 5 main stats here, prioritizing power, combat advantage, crit severity, and crit strike, then accuracy. And that is why you would have the Metallic Dragonborn, then the Dragonborn, Gith, Half-Orc, Wood Elf, Human. They all give those offensive stats that are going to give you the damage boost. But keep in mind, even if you're in solo content, you're still better off being a drow because it's going to result in more damage versus than just the stats, let's say, the Dragonborn can give you. But with the Renegade, getting 5% offensive stats is a little bit better. So not as good for solo content, more for, again, supporting your entire team. However, you may not feel like it's your duty to take those races, and you may be correct. Healers and tanks could use those races instead, thus leaving you to use a race which gives you offensive stats, thus increasing your damage further rather than using that race when it can just be used by somebody else. Now, what exact race to use here can depend on a number of things. I've ranked them pretty much on exactly how much benefit they're going to give you in terms of damage, but that can be influenced depending on the content and what gear pieces you have available to you. Some gear pieces can give you a big boost in one certain stat type. For example, on a rogue, it can be harder to get your critical strike up versus being much easier with crit severity and combat advantage, and thus taking a wood elf could be better than a Gith or a half-orc. And you may also not want to look like a dragonborn, and so again, that leaves you with those other options, and that's why I've generally gone with wood elf with most of my damage dealing classes, and we'll cover that in another section, what races are best for what class. For now, we're covering what role. This again is for damage dealers. But let's move on from there to healers. If you're a healer, what race should you choose? Well, we have a few starred races there, as those are the support races. They're going to give your team a benefit, not just yourself. Azamar is now included in here because it's actually going to give your team some hit points. For a DPS, that's irrelevant in terms of dealing damage, but it will help in survivability, and that's the duty of the healer and the tank to provide to the team. Then again, you have the Drow listed there by supporting the team with them dealing more damage. Same with the Renegade. Just be aware it can depend on what healer, because Not all healers are that great at hitting quickly and often, and thus activating this 10% chance when attacking can be a bit more tricky on some healer classes, but depending on what powers you choose there as well. If you just want to get statistics to boost your healing, then you will be wanting to go with power, critical strike, critical severity, and outgoing healing. And thus you have the selection of races following here with the Metallic Dragonborn, the Half-Orc, Wood Elf, Human, Half-Elf, Sun Elf, Moon Elf. We have ordered them again in what I would say is the best to the worst, with leaving out the complete worst ones that are not going to benefit to your heals at all. And again, the reasoning is because the amount of stats they give that would benefit to your heals. Sun Elf and Moon Elf have like action point gain, which will help a little bit to get your daily power back just a teeny bit faster, but in general nowhere near as good as some extra stats to help with your healing. So then you go to the tanks. Again, they have now 4 starred races here. These will all support your team. We have now added the Tiefling, which has its Infernal Wrath. 10% chance when an enemy attacks you that you cause them to have their damage reduced by 5%. That's a nice survivability boost, not just for yourself, but also anybody who that enemy also attacks. So if they have some area of effect attacks that your allies can't avoid, Zariel, Tower the Mad Mage, you can provide that survivability bonus. So it is a good support race as well there for a tank. The only problem is the rest of the bonuses are not too great for a tank other than helping with threat generation. But then again, on this list you have the Renegade, which can also reduce the target's damage, but also increase the damage they take by reducing the defense. The Azamar will give you some boosts to your incoming healing, defense, and hit points, which is nice, but also increase your entire party's hit points. And then the Drow again to reduce the target's defense. And then if you want to go full on survivability just for yourself, then as a tank you'll want to focus on these 5 defensive stats. And that is why we have then the Dwarf with the 5% defense, Human with 1% to all the 15 stats you have, Metallic Dragonborn with the 3% maximum hit points and 3% incoming healing, Halfling with the 5% deflect, Half-Elf with the 3% deflect, and then like the Dragonborn with 5% incoming healing, and then you get some action point gain, stamina gain, and some extra stamina gain here as well. They just kind of taper off to very inconsequential bonuses there. So personally, what I have gone with and what I have changed to is, yes, the Menzoberranzan Renegade. This again gives the bonus of Fairy Fire, that 10% chance to reduce your target's damage and defense. One of the best racial abilities for team support. Additionally, it will give us 5% deflect severity, which will help our survivability. That's one of our defensive stats here. If I am to switch from tank to healer, yes, I will lose out on, let's say, a 5% boost to my healing stats, but at this point, with the amount of gear you can get that gives healing stats, you're not going to have too much struggle when you get to endgame to maximize those out. But again, potentially if you're a newer player, you might want to focus more on personal buffs than your team, depending on what you're comfortable with. If everybody's dying because you can't heal them good enough, there might not be a lot of point in increasing their damage by an eensy-weensy little bit over just increasing those heals so you can prevent them from dying as often. Now ultimately, if you just want a quick table of what you should choose based on your class, because certain classes have different roles they can fulfill, like a barbarian is a tank and a damage dealer, this would be the recommendations I would provide you. Again, we are putting Drow at the front as it is the best race to support the team in dealing extra damage, followed by the Renegade. But if you want more personal buffs from your race, then the second option is there. Like a barbarian, you take like a human, as it would provide stats both for your tank side and your damage dealing side. Then like Renegade for the support and Metallic Dragonborn for the more offensive stats side, but it has some defensive stats with it as well. Bard is like a healer and a DPS, so again there's the Drow there, the Metallic Dragonborn, the Dragonborn, the Wood Elf, they'll all provide damage stats and heal stats. It's the same with the cleric there. The paladin is a tank or a healer, so I would just go full support there. Drow or renegade or Aasimar, and otherwise like the metallic dragonborn for both of the benefits to tank and heal. The ranger, it's like the same with the bard and the cleric, but it's a full DPS, and I would take Gith there as that final option there because of the combat advantage bonus, and you're going to benefit more from that. Warlock and wizard, it's all the same there, but with wood elf at the end. Fighter, they're a tank or a damage dealer. Again, the drows there, human, the renegade, the metallic dragonborn. And for rogue, it's like, again, the drow, metallic dragonborn, and wood elf. The reason I haven't thrown Gith here with the rogue is because it's much easier to get your combat advantage up with the rogue, and thus the benefit from the Gith isn't as important. Again, you look at this table here and what they give you, and yes, the half orc's an option, but crit severity right now in endgame is pretty easy to max out, specifically for a rogue and pretty much any class, thus it's not listed. Versus wood elf, which is crit strike, which is harder to obtain, so that's there. So hopefully this helps some of you out there on what race to choose. Some tables there, some rankings based on your role, and ultimately a quick selection of what you might choose based on your class. Getting race reroll tokens is an option. You can get them through the Zen market, through the services section here. You can just buy them directly. But keep in mind, if you have not unlocked a race, you can just purchase the race unlock here and you'll get a race reroll token with it. They cost exactly the same, so you may as well just unlock the races when you're trying to get a race reroll token anyway. Now, they recently provided a free pack where you could choose like the renegade race as an option. And when you do that, you will also receive a race reroll token. But again, I wouldn't focus so much on your race until you're pushing for endgame, trying to do the master content, min-maxing your team's damage, your survivability, so on and so forth. But again, I would recommend every team have a drow, a Menzoberranzan and renegade, and an Aasimar. I guess the coordination of that only really works within a set group. And for master content, you will want to look towards getting that, especially when the master content is new. Find a group of friends, stick together, learn the content, and ultimately beat it. That's the best way you're going to be successful in endgame in Neverwinter. Find like-minded players and play with them regularly. So thank you for watching, and a special thank you to all these channel members for their added support. We'll see you guys around. Goodbye for now. Oh, and yes, I get asked all the time what appearance am I using, and this is my current setup for my paladin.